Hello there. Okay, I am excited today. We're going to dive into a subject that I think is really important. I think it's going to really empower a lot of people who see this and just my outcome goal of this is to provide you some information to just give you some ideas and understand what sugar is, and then be able to kind of relate that to your own eating and be able to expand upon the things that I talk about. A lot of times I take these things for granted that I'm going to teach right now, but I know a lot of times people don't have any clue about what I'm talking about. So yeah, I'm excited to dive in. So let's go. All right, let's get this presentation fired up here. All right. So, understanding sugar, glycemic index, and glycemic loads. So, I think these are important for learning how to eat healthy. I think they're important if you're trying to lose weight. Very important to understand these things that I'm going to talk about. And then, like diabetes as well. Like, these are things just to understand. And I know a lot of times they teach these things in diabetes classes as well. So, but yeah. What is sugar? Sugar it's a macronutrient, and it's 1 gram of sugar is a 4 calories. So, and sugar is it's a macronutrient. A lot of times sugar is demonized and looked at as something negative, and like it's demonized all over the place. Like sugar's bad, sugar's bad. Um, sugar. That's it. I mean, it's understanding the concepts. Yeah, there's better sources of sugar of where to get it, but all sugar converts over to glucose in the body. So whether you're having a fruit, that fructose, which I'll talk about here in a second, will switch over to glucose, and our bodies will do one of three things I like to teach people. Like, they're going to either burn it off as energy, like as our brains are working, as we're talking, as our muscle, our organs, our heart, our activity, the exercise, we burn that off as sugar. That's obviously a good thing. Second thing is we store it as glycogen. Glycogen stores in the cell to use for energy later. So it stores the sugar in the cell to be able to utilize as energy later. And that's a good thing as well. So a lot of times, like having some sugars after exercise, I'll kind of mention that as we go here as well. Our body stores that, and we're able to burn that off for energy later. And then the third thing is we're going to store it as body fat. And a lot of times that is, unless we're trying to gain weight, a lot of times that is not what we're trying to do. And that's the problem with like, hopefully you'll have a better understanding of how sugar works after we go through this presentation. But sugar is a type of carbohydrate that provides energy. It is the main source of energy for the body. So it's a good thing. Like, I always have carbohydrate before I exercise so I can get a better exercise. And then, like with that, just to mention exercise here really quick. Exercise is for energy. So ideally, like when we're exercising, we are looking to improve our lives in some type of way. This is how I like people to try to frame this. So ideally, you always want to get the best exercise to where you're currently at. So, for example, if you're feeling really good, maybe you can work hard that day or harder. So, but learning the intensity levels that you use, where you're going to burn a little more sugar then. And then if you're really tired, maybe you don't work out as hard, but and then that way you get energy back. Because a lot of times, like if you're really tired and you exercise too hard, like your energy levels will drop. But I'm not here to talk about that today, but I do like to kind of frame that, because I always eat carbohydrate before I exercise. Always. Like I always want to get a good workout. The muscles are firing it's the main source of energy, so that's what's giving the muscle energy to be able to get a great workout. And so I always have it. Now, the amount I always pay attention to as well, but it's like, it's all converts over to glucose, so regardless of what kind. But there's two main forms I just kind of want to frame this as for you to think about sugar as. There's going to be natural sugars. These are going to be found in the natural foods that you eat. So it's going to be found in fruits, vegetables, dairy, or some examples there. But it's the natural foods that we eat. And then there's the added sugar. These are found in processed food, drinks, snacks. Like, these are the ones, in all honesty, that are just bombarded and that are causing the problem in my opinion, of course, in the country. So it's like, but they're not good or bad. Like if you can learn to control and understand the amount of carbohydrates you're intaking, like you'll have control in your life of what happens like with your health. Because and I'll kind of get into calories here in a sec. I don't have that as part of the presentation today, but I will chat about it. But excessive sugar intake is linked to weight gain, diabetes, heart disease, energy crashes. I mean, the problem is like you're over consuming too. So when it comes to the amount of calories and just being in a like homeostasis natural point, like there's a certain amount that we need per day. It's going to be a little different for everybody. It depends on, there's some general factors where you can kind of figure out a general number, but we all need to be around a certain amount, and there's plenty of calculations that you can just do a search on that and find those online. But we need a certain amount of calories every day. So if you go over those calories, you're going to store more body fat. If you stay under them, you'll like in a calorie deficit, you lose weight, and that's generally how it works. Now, the amount of sugar controls factors in your body, which sugar is, and I'll kind of get into that here in a second. I'm jumping ahead here. So, but the thing is, like, you don't want to have excessive amounts of sugar, because it is going to cause problems. And then generally, if we're getting it from natural foods, you're going to be better off, because a lot of times like you're getting the fiber and things that are going to make you feel full, so you're not going to overeat it. These added sugars, in my opinion, cravings, which I probably should have put in here as well, is going to cause you to crave more. And just starting to be aware of, like, notice if you're eating lots of sugars and diet sodas and those type of things. Notice like how you crave more food. So sugar is known to cause you to crave more sugar, and it's a lot of times we take that as being hungry, but that's craving, and that's a different subject to kind of chat about than what we're going to talk about today. But just be aware of that. There's types of sugar. I just got a few listed here, but glucose, fructose, sucrose, any ones with OSE, lactose, maltose, those are like any of the ones with OSE. I mean, these are the main ones that we see. Glucose is the preferred energy source found in carbohydrates. This is what it all converts over. So whether you're having fructose, sucrose, whatever it is, it's going to convert over to glucose, and that's going to be how we use that energy, or store as fat, or store it as glycogen, one of those three things I talked about before. But all of it converts over to glucose. Like a lot of times people with diabetes, the doctor will give glucose pills in case their blood sugar crashes, because you take that, it immediately gets in the blood, and it'll get the blood sugar back up to levels that are going to be safe for the person. Fructose, these are found in fruit and some vegetables and metabolized in the liver. Like fructose just doesn't convert straight over to glucose. It has to go to the liver first, and then the liver will release the glucose out. So, but fructose is found in fruits and vegetables. And then sucrose, common table sugar, a combination of glucose and fructose. So those are just some basics of it. Now, what is the glycemic index? So the carbohydrates that you intake, whether they're coming from natural foods or added sugars in the processed foods that you're having, there's a glycemic index value. I don't hear this talked about a lot. Like, this is something that I learned a lot about when I was working at a weight loss spa, and something that we taught people just to understand. And I feel like it is an important factor to, like, do a web search, for example, on glycemic index foods, and then base your decisions on the food you're eating on lower glycemic foods that you eat. The glycemic index ranks how fast a carbohydrate containing food raises your glucose levels. That's the glucose levels in your blood sugar levels in your body. So that's how fast they raise in your body. So if you have a high one, it's going to raise the glucose levels faster than a lower one. Scale is 0 to 100, with pure glucose being 100. Like if you take those glucose pills I was talking about before, they're going to be 100. Generally, Other foods are going to be lower than that, which I'll go over some lists here in a bit. But lower GI foods here are 55 or less. You got beans, oats, most fruits. Some fruits are going to be higher than others, like berries are going to be lower, for example. Bananas and other fruits are going to be a little bit higher. Medium GI foods like bananas, brown rice, they get a little bit higher. High GI foods like the white breads, potatoes are another one to be aware of. They're a high glycemic. But generally any of the white rice, like those are going to be high GI foods. And those are ones like you want to limit how much you're having. So really learning to pay attention to that. So lower GI foods lead to slower digestion, more stable energy, and better blood sugar control. And I'm actually sitting here now that after I put this together, I probably should have put something in here to kind of talk about that. So kind of thinking of the glycemic index. So like, and keeping blood sugar levels constant, if you have a high glycemic food, it raises your blood sugar levels. Your body's response is to release insulin to lower the blood sugar down to levels that are going to be safe. Now, depending on how much of the higher sugar foods that you have and how high that level goes up determines how much your body releases. So if you drink like a soda or a sugary drink, for example, and get like a whole big can of it and get say 50 grams of carbohydrates, like all in liquid form, that's going to shoot your sugar levels up. Your body releases all kinds of insulin, usually more than what your body needs to get those levels back down, because high blood sugar levels are not healthy for the body. So the insulin's job now, and I don't have that in here either, is to do one of those three things that I was talking about before. It's going to help burn it off as energy. You're going to store it as glycogen. Think of it like a key. So it's a key that's opening it up so the glucose can be used as energy. Or number three is it's going to be stored as body fat. So you can look at eating the higher sugar foods is because your body only has so much energy it needs at a moment, and it only has so much, unless you're exercising hard, but it only has so much glycogen that you can store. And during exercise, you'll generally be burning off more sugar if you're working within those higher intensity levels, like HIIT training, like we do generally with me. Or the third thing is it stores as fat. So like when you're having these high sugar foods, like you're going to be getting lots of body fat being stored because your body, that's what it needs to do. And then you get, I'm not here to talk about that, but then you you do that over and over again, and your body ends up getting resistance to the insulin, which means that key's not working the way that it's supposed to be working. And that's where like you get into some of the medications and things working with your doctor, but that's the thing. You can think like when you're having all these really sugary things, your body's that key's just opening the fat cells to store more and more fat, just to kind of give you a visual of that. Now, higher insulin levels, like you got to think too, if you are, let's say, trying to lose weight and you're trying to get your body to lose weight, and you've got all this insulin that's trying to store it as fat, and you're trying to get your body to burn fat, you got a little bit of a problem there as well. So this is the advantage of having lower or just regular not lower blood sugar, but good blood sugar levels so your body can work the way it's supposed to. And when you're in a deficit, to be able to lose weight without getting those jumps gives you more constant energy. So, because if you ever notice, like, you eat a whole bunch of sugar, like a soda or something, whatever sugary thing, and it's like all of a sudden, like, oh, I got all this energy, I'm all over the place. And then a half hour later, it's like, oh, I'm so tired, and I'm craving more sugar because your body releases all that insulin. Look, sugar levels get down. You start craving more sugar because your body's like, I need sugar. And then, of course, you eat more sugar, and it can be an endless cycle, and then you're constantly storing body fat through that process. Not healthy for the body, and then just getting yourself to where you get those blood sugar levels even. So what's a food what's a GI food, glycemic index food? GI's glycemic index. Sorry. What influences a food's glycemic index? Like fruits, like a banana, for example, that's green is going to be more starchier, which releases slower, versus a very ripe banana, which is more sugary. So it's going to raise sugar levels quicker there. Just something to be aware of. Processed foods typically have higher GIs. So it's like if you're eating processed foods, I like to label processed foods as junk food. That's how I teach my family. Like, so we'll eat chips and those type of things, but I always label it as junk food. We always, and like in our family, we never give our kids, they don't get to eat as much as they want. They do just small portions of that. And it's again, just because you don't want to be over consuming that. There's not a health benefit to that. So cooking methods, the longer you cook the food, like pasta, like the higher the GI gets. Like these are all things that can affect it. Fiber content, fiber foods tend to have lower GI. Fiber tends to slow down the digestion of the carbohydrate and release it slower, which is a good thing. So higher fiber foods are going to generally benefit people to control sugar levels, along with eating some protein and some fat, which I'll chat about here shortly as well. So understanding the glycemic load is considered both the GI and the amount of carbohydrate and food portions of the food. There's 3 key points to give a more. So I want to kind of give you an idea. Like I've not ever personally calculated the glycemic load, but I think it's important to be aware of. And I think it's just understanding the amount of carbohydrates you're intaking and the type of food is usually, I feel, a lot better. But if you got diabetes, I feel like this is something like you could really look into and use this as calculations. There are measures and things online so you can figure this out. I got a calculation here too. Let me go and pull that. So the formula, glycemic load equals the glycemic index times the carbohydrate content per serving in the gram divided by 100. So again, this isn't something I've ever calculated myself, but the whole takeaway from this is like the amount of carbohydrate you have matters. So like, let's just say somebody brought up Hershey Kisses in class the other day of how many they eat, but let's just say you eat 2 Hershey Kisses versus 10. 2 of them is like that sugar level is not going to raise as much in 2 of them as it is 10. You have 10, you're going to get a big sugar level spike, and that does make a difference. And that's the thing, like sugar is always demonized, and it's being able to have the self-discipline and having the portions and the amounts that, or what you need. I mean, and it works. So it's like just being aware of that. So it's like demonizing. The problem is people are over consuming it. The junk food is the processed foods. I mean, they taste good. We're over consuming those. I mean, and that's the big problem that we're having right now in the country is this food industry. I mean, I could go on and on with what I think's going on here, but just we're being tricked. We're getting all these processed food. The food tastes really good, so we want to eat more of it. Blood sugar levels are just all over the place, and it causes problems. So anyway, the scale for this, the low glycemic load foods is 10 or less, medium is 11 to 19, and high is 20 or more. So glycemic index versus glycemic load measures how quickly food raises blood sugar, takes into account the quantity of carb, making it a better overall guide. Focuses solely on the quality of the carbohydrates on the glycemic index and takes into account both the quality and the quantity of the carbohydrate. So in watermelon, like using this as an example, has a high glycemic index but a low glycemic load because most times we're not consuming like large amounts of watermelon. Now, on the other hand, if you're eating like a whole watermelon, that is going to raise the glycemic loads because it's like it's the amount that you're having. So that will change it, and that always matters. And this is why learning to portion off how much you should be having and understanding, and like really the only way you'll ever figure that out is learning how to read labels and in measuring your food. So what gets measured gets managed. So if you're measuring your either glycemic index or glycemic load, you can manage it. If you're not measuring it, I highly doubt that you're managing it. So these are works. This is why with clients that I always work with, I am always pushing to to measure their food, to journal. And journaling has lots of benefits, but like MyFitnessPal is the one that I usually recommend. So definitely checking that out. So the health benefits of a low GI, glycemic index and glycemic load food: to stabilize blood sugar levels, lower risk of energy crashes and cravings. You stay constant, you got more of a constant energy throughout the day. Generally, I mean, you see things, you're going to probably sleep better as well. So it's like you want to learn to keep energy levels constant. Improved weight control, better satiety, and reduced overeating. So, and that's the thing, like if you're eating and keeping your blood sugars at bay, you're just putting yourself in advantage to not being and having cravings. And that's just something to kind of dive in, just chatting about that, like really learn the difference between craving food and hungry. So whenever you're like wanting to eat, like, are you craving it? Like, or do you, and I'll use an example of myself real quick. There was a point in time, like I'm always over dramatic. But there was a point in time with my last fitness studio where I had just eaten, and I had coming out, I can't remember what I'd eaten, but it was like, I come out and I'm like, oh, I'm so starving. And in that moment, I'm like, why am I saying I'm so starving? I think I was eating some high sugary foods the day before, like lots of junk food. And I'm like, I just ate, like I'm not hungry. Like I just ate, like I just had a good full size meal. And I was like, and that's where I'm like, I'm not hungry at all. I was like, I'm just craving food. And then I kind of went out and pulled out my journal, because when I have those thoughts, I'm like, let's figure this out. So I went into really starting to think like, why am I? And it's like, then that started paying attention. Like I have those days where, and I can really eat. Like I can have the bad days of eating cake and binging and having those type of things. I think that's why I relate to people so well. But with like, I forgot what I was going to say. So back to the craving, where I've completely, sorry, my ADD jumped in there. It'll come back, but regardless, it's just starting to understand the difference between being like when you're actually hungry and then where you're starving, paying attention. So what I started to learn through that process was the amount of sugar that I was having the day before will like be where I'm at the following day. Like if I'm craving like more sugary junk foods, it's because usually the day before I had lots of junk. And generally if I eat, and sometimes depending on how bad, like if I have a bad weekend where I just went off my rocker, which happens from time to time, it's usually about Wednesday, Thursday till, this is me, I'm just using myself as an example, you have to figure out yourself, but I will notice it's usually eating, like I get right back on my eating every Monday, but it's usually by Wednesday-ish, sometime through Wednesday, till I'm starting to get rid of those cravings. And I just have to have the discipline in those, and I've done it so many times, it's easy for me now. But that Monday, Tuesday, like I have to be really focused, because I want the junk. Like I want to keep eating that junk that I was eating. So it's like the stuff to me is just, it's dangerous. So fortunately, I've developed the discipline, and that's what I hope to help. And that's why I'm sharing this story. So I hope to give you some knowledge so you can be aware of that, so you can learn about yourself and learn to make better choices. I forgot my water downstairs and my throat is burning. So it helps manage insulin levels, and so hang on, sorry, I lost my train of thought. I'm back. It helps manage insulin levels. So again, that constant sugar, you're not getting those spikes, and if you're trying to lose weight, that's going to help you to be able to burn fat more efficiently. When you're in a calorie deficit, you got to be in a calorie deficit as well. And then just the long-term health benefits: support heart health and reduces inflammation. So I've read lots about how sugar affects. I've had lots of people, when they cut out sugar, who've had diabetes, coming back saying that their inflammation is way down. The doctors are generally telling people to start cutting sugar a lot of times, and that as well. So just being aware of these things, and again, like these are things for you to figure out on your own. So I hope you're finding this helpful. Foods with low GI and low glycemic, healthy low GI food choices. So beans, chickpeas are going to be example, like legumes, whole grains, quinoa, oats, non-starchy vegetables. And these are good ones too, like just kind of talking about usually like the greener, starchy, leafy vegetables. These are the ones that usually have the most nutrients in the food as well. So these are very beneficial. You get lots of fiber with all these foods that I'm mentioning now. A lot of times, like with the sugar, like the body has to work a little bit harder to get to the sugar because it has to work through the fiber. Fiber doesn't digest, so but fiber, you do get lots of nutrients there as well. So, and that thing, like always think like nourishing the body. I mean, looking at good old, I mean, these are cartoon looking, but green foods, it's like, think like nourishing. And like as you're eating, always think those things, because think placebo effect. Because like as I eat food, like I've had a lot of concussions from all my bike crashes. When I eat my sardines, I eat them every single morning. I had them right before this today. And I'm always thinking like, oh, these are so healthy. And it's like, think of placebo effect, because a lot of times, like as they're doing trials, half are placebos, half are not. And a lot of times the people who think they're taking the medication are getting better. So what effect if you're eating nutritious food and you are thinking like, oh, this food is making me nutritious? Like, just something to think about. Is that going to help you to be healthy or not? Dairy, milk, so you generally have lower glycemic index. And just be aware too, like when it comes to milk, like when you take something out of food, you got to add something else back in. And this is where it really became a problem in the countries when they went low fat years ago. I think that's starting to change now. But when they went low fat, so they started demonizing fat. They just can't seem to figure things out here now. Now sugar is being demonized, and I think it's just misunderstood, and that's my goal with this. But when they started cutting fat, you got to when you take something out of food, you got to add something else back in. Guess what that something else is? It's sugar. So generally, when they're cutting the fat out of food, out of the milk and those type of things, for example, they're going to be adding more sugar, so you're going to get more carbs in there, and then that's again going to raise the level. So just being aware of that. And if you learn to eat like macro wise, I mean, that's getting a lot more advanced here, and I'm not going to go off on that tangent today. But a lot of times, like you can get away with the fat. Like for example, I eat 60 grams per day, 60 to 70 grams per day. And it's like, I mean, I can get my sources just as long as it's going over. My carbohydrates are about the same. So my energy levels stay pretty constant till the weekend sometimes. So foods with high glycemic index and glycemic loads. So foods to be mindful of are going to be white bread, bagels, pastries. And these are the highly processed foods. So even like when you're making these things yourselves, sugary drinks and candies, instant rice, mashed potatoes, processed snacks, chips, and like all these, and I know a lot of times I got lots of bakers, I consider this junk food all the time. So and I mean, rice and those, I guess technically could be argued it's just got the fiber strip. The mashed potatoes are real food, so you do get generally a little bit more of that food there. But it's, and I say junk food, I learned this from an old coach of mine. He's an old biochemist coach. And when you frame it as junk food, a lot of times like it's telling yourself there's something wrong and not to eat it, because who wants to eat junk food? That's why I frame it that way with my kids. And we don't tell them not to eat it, but it's like, it's just the amounts that you have, so the portion controls. And the thing is, like, we are over consuming these things to such large amounts that, I mean, I read something the other day, and I looked it up and kind of backed it, but it's getting to about, I think 80% of the country is overweight, and the obese rate is 40% according to the source that I was reading. Now those are both up from, I think it was 36% probably about 10 years ago ish. So it's like that part is raising. And I mean, this is part of the reason why it's like we're eating so much of these type of foods. Now, having them in moderation in the amounts that we need. But if you don't know how much you're eating because you're not journaling or paying attention, and you're gaining weight, you're over consuming it, period. I mean, that's it. So you have to become aware. I don't know how to help people to become aware without measuring, because what gets measured gets managed. I mean, this is what helps people to be successful with anything. You want to change something in your life, you start to measure it. So start paying attention. So like using journaling, for example, you start journaling your food, just writing it down, not even journaling it in the amounts, you start becoming aware of it. Then you start becoming aware, you're able to manage it. That's the thing. Like, you're able to start controlling the portions that you're eating. And then you can take it a little step further. Then you start measuring like the amounts, using like MyFitnessPal, like a medium apple. That's still not that accurate, but you're starting to put things in order, and you can start managing and be like, hey, if you're not losing weight, for an example, you can be like, okay, something's still off. Like, a lot of times people revert to, like, not a lot of people, everybody's different, so the situation's different. That wasn't fair to say, but sometimes people start thinking like, oh, there's something wrong with me, and where it's, if you're not measuring, you can't really figure that out. So you're putting something on yourself and not giving yourself a fair chance. And that's what being able to measure and be able to get some information, because it just gives you information so you can base decisions based on that. Some tips to managing the GI. Hang on, sorry, I'm going the wrong way. Pair high GI foods with protein or fat, and to lower their effects on blood sugar. So when I worked at the weight loss spa, and we would have a lot of people that would come with diabetes, they had to eat protein with every meal. That was one of the guys that I worked for's rules. Diabetes, you have to eat it with protein, because it changes the release of how the sugar goes into the blood, which keeps those blood sugar levels from rising. So learning to always eat protein, and protein has lots of other benefits, which I'm not going to talk about today, but making sure you're getting your protein levels. Fat also slows the release, and so does the fiber. So choosing whole grains over refined grains. And actually, just talking about this, for example, just a label to be aware of whole grain foods, like when you are getting the processed foods, versus multi-grain, because that's like one of the food industry is always putting these things on labels, and it should put red flags up for you to be like, let me look a little further, because these labels can sometimes mislead us to eat things that we think are healthy that are unhealthy. Like the whole grains, like whole grains are going to have the fiber, so that means generally it's going to be better with the sugar levels, usually lower glycemic index, versus the multi-grain. So the multi-grain, that just means there's multiple different grains in it, so it doesn't mean that's healthy. And that's something that, like, when I learned that, I was like, oh, it got me. I fell for that. So you just got to be aware, and that's my key, is to bring awareness and help people be able to make better decisions. Opt for non-starchy vegetables and high fiber fruits. So just more of those leafy green vegetables are always a good choice, and higher fiber fruits, like berries, for example. Like, fiber always slows down the release of the sugar. So pay attention to portion sizes, especially in the glycemic index foods. And I mean, that's just it. So it's like, if you want to eat, like, potatoes are real food. So let's just say, like, you go to some of these restaurants, they got these huge potatoes that they're probably like 100 grams of carbohydrates, and then they're putting butter and sour cream. Oh my gosh, like, just think about that for a sec. But it's like, let's just say you ate the potato, which 100 grams of carbohydrates, you're going to get this huge spike. Now let's just say you're going to eat in moderation, and you're just going to eat 25 grams of that potato along with the ribeye steak, because ribeyes are delicious. You get the fat. You're just going to have a little bit of butter on it, because you don't want to overeat the fat. I'm just trying to give you guys ideas here. That way, like, you still get a good amount of calories. You're still going to be full. The sugar levels don't jump up as much. They stay more stable, and then you don't get the blood sugar drop later from having all that potato. And then you're probably not going to be as tired, because let's face it, like, you eat a ribeye steak, like you go to a steakhouse, for example, get the ribeye steak with that potato loaded with everything. I mean, you're probably, I mean, you never know how many calories, 2,000 calories. Can't figure out, wow, I'm so tired, I just ate so much, I want to go home and nap, versus having a smaller meal where you have more energy, you feel better, you don't get the spike, you're not feeling tired and sluggish. And I mean, that's the whole advantage of all this. So balancing it for workouts. So generally workouts like before you're going to workouts, focus on moderate GI foods for sustained energy, glycemic index foods. Banana, you hear me say bananas all the time, and I mean that's my go-to. That's generally what I eat. These are the two main foods that I eat. Most times it's always bananas because it's quick and easy, and I usually have that as I'm driving to the gym or before I walk out the door to go to the gym, for bike rides. And if I'm going for a long bike ride, I take bananas with me. But those are great foods to have. And just to kind of touch on that really quick here too, before you work out, you want to get a great workout. So a lot of times people decide not to eat. Like, you're not going to be able to get as good of a workout like when you don't eat. And it's like a lot of times people think, okay, well, I'm burning more fat. Like, well, the key is to get a good workout. There's more benefit. Like, the weight loss comes from nutritionally eating properly, 80-90% of it. Exercise helps very little. Like, you can't outtrain the bad diet. So but you always want to get a great workout because that's going to give us benefits for years to come, like if we stay consistent with it and our vitality and our health. So think of it that way. Post-workout, you can have some of the higher glycemic foods. I still generally will stick with like a banana shake, but a lot of times, like after you work out, you replenish those glycogen stores. Those that's a good thing. Like, that's faster recovery. The faster you recover, the quicker you're able to change. But that's where you can get away with like white rice and potatoes and foods like that. So in the daily diets, but balance the GI foods for longer lasting energy throughout the day. Take control of your blood sugar and GI. I forget what I put here. So 3 key points. Focus on glycemic index and glycemic load foods for better energy, weight control, and lasting long-term health. Combine carbohydrates with protein and fats to stabilize the blood sugar, and use glycemic load as a more accurate guide to portion sizes and food choices, if that's something you gotta look into. So it's like, and I just find an online resource for these. So anyway, that is all I got. I hope y'all found this helpful. If you have any questions, you can let your coach know or put it in the comments, and we'll see about getting it answered. But yes, let's go control some blood sugar levels.